St. Louis, Missouri, an urban sprawl on the banks of the Mississippi that officially spans 66 square miles and is home to nearly 4 million people. A city full of diversity, architecture, culture, the second largest city park in the country, and the best fans in baseball. A city with a history that symbolizes expansion, movement, and opportunity, all tucked neatly under a blue Midwestern sky. But there's another side to the story. Underneath the veneer is a dark and painful past, one full of segregation, classism, economic disparity, and division. This story puts St. Louis atop the most dangerous cities in the U.S. list each year and is perhaps best exemplified by a small municipality that sits silently across the river. East St. Louis, the most impoverished city in America, just a glance away from the mighty symbol of the gateway to the West. In 1904, St. Louis was the first non-European host to the Summer Olympics. It was the largest city in the Midwest and the third largest in the nation. The economy was thriving. The future was bright. As the 40s and 50s approached, housing conditions began to decline, and the predominantly white middle class began fleeing for the suburbs. Their former residences were occupied by low-income families, blacks on the north side and whites to the south. The slums were expanding, tax dollars were waning, and segregation was increasing. St. Louis was sinking deeper into a hole it couldn't climb out of. In 2002, a small group of about 30 began to meet in a South City basement. They were the culmination of a vision that began years before, a church in the city, for the city, where the gospel of Jesus was central and alive and addressing the brokenness in St. Louis, not just spiritually, but practically. As Jesus began changing people's lives from the inside out, that change began seeping into their neighborhoods and communities. By 2007, 30 people had turned into hundreds spread out across the metro area, while ministries and partner organizations began to spring up from within, addressing specific needs that weren't being met. Mission St. Louis began transforming at-risk neighborhoods into thriving, vibrant communities. Covering House took on a booming sex trafficking industry, offering a place of refuge for its victims. Doors for real gospel ministry to underprivileged youth were opened in East St. Louis, North St. Louis, and West St. Louis. Injustice was being fought. Poverty was being addressed. Low-income, hurting people had somewhere to turn for help. By 2013, 2 more new churches launched as existing churches grew. Partner churches were being planted. Leaders were being sent into the mission field to multiply disciples. A movement had begun. Surely things were changing. Then, Ferguson. Then, reality. The extent of the damage from a century of segregation, the underbelly of St. Louis's past, surfaced for all to see. Where was the church? Where was the gospel? Where was reconciliation? Was this really our city? We saw how deep the darkness runs, into our very hearts. The vision of what a church in the city, for the city, meant in this city was becoming clearer and clearer. And all who profess to be the body of Christ, all who claim Jesus as their risen King, are called to be a part of it. The need is great for reconciliation, for hope, for St. Louis to become all that it was meant to be. God is calling His church to rise up. The movement He began must continue until the work is complete.